If you're the youngest child in your family and you've always been labeled as the spoiled one, the baby, the one who got everything handed to them, pay very close attention because what I'm about to tell you might completely reframe your entire childhood. Before we dive in, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because we're going deep into family psychology today. Here's what most people don't realize. The youngest child isn't the spoiled one. They're the emotional regulator of the entire family system. Psychologically, by the time the youngest child arrives, the family has already established its patterns, its conflicts, its unspoken tensions. And that youngest child absorbs all of it. From a family systems theory perspective, every family needs someone to discharge emotional tension. Someone who can lighten the mood when things get heavy. Someone who can diffuse conflict before it explodes. And the youngest child, whether they realize it or not, becomes that person. This happens because older siblings and parents unconsciously assign the youngest a role. The role of keeper of joy. The role of emotional glue. The role of the one who makes everything okay just by being there. Quick question, where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing our global community come together. Behaviorally, youngest children learn early that their job is to manage other people's emotions. When parents are fighting, they become the distraction. When siblings are tense, they become the comic relief. When the family is falling apart, they become the reason to hold it together. People see this as being spoiled because youngest children often get attention. But that attention isn't unconditional love. It's conditional on their ability to perform emotional labor. To be cute enough, funny enough, charming enough to keep everyone else stable. Psychologically, this creates a pattern where the youngest child learns that their value is tied to their ability to regulate others. They don't get to have their own needs, their own moods, their own emotional reality. Their job is to reflect back whatever the family needs them to be in that moment. From a developmental standpoint, this is devastating. Children need to be allowed to develop their own emotional identity, but the youngest child never gets that opportunity. They're too busy being the family's emotional thermostat. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a family dinner where the parents are barely speaking to each other. The tension is thick. The older siblings are withdrawn, uncomfortable. And the youngest child starts telling a silly story, making jokes, doing anything to get people to smile. Everyone laughs. The tension breaks, and the youngest child feels successful. But here's what nobody sees. That child just learned that their discomfort with tension matters less than everyone else's. That their job is to fix the emotional climate, not to express how that climate affects them. They learn to prioritize everyone else's feelings over their own. Or think about the youngest child who watches their older sibling get yelled at by a parent. They see the pain in their sibling's face, the anger in their parents, and they instinctively do something to shift the energy. They ask for help with homework. They mention something funny that happened at school. They create a distraction. The family unconsciously rewards this. They turn their attention to the youngest. The conflict pauses, and the youngest child learns that their role is to interrupt pain, to prevent escalation, to keep the peace at any cost. This is what being the youngest actually looks like. It's not about getting more presents or fewer rules. It's about carrying the emotional weight of an entire family system while everyone else calls you spoiled. Neurologically, this creates a hypervigilance to other people's emotional states. The youngest child's nervous system becomes attuned to the slightest shift in mood, tone, energy. They can walk into a room and immediately sense tension that others don't notice. This happens because their survival depended on it. If they missed the signs that conflict was building, they couldn't intervene. If they didn't catch the shift in their parents' mood, they couldn't adjust their behavior accordingly. So their brain developed extraordinary sensitivity to emotional cues. From an attachment theory perspective, this often creates an anxious attachment style. The youngest child learns that love is conditional on performance, that connection is maintained through effort, that relationships require constant management to prevent them from falling apart. And if this is hitting home right now, if you're recognizing yourself in this description, type "me" in the comments. You're not alone. Thousands of youngest children are watching this and finally understanding why they feel the way they do. Here's the part that makes this particularly painful. Youngest children are often told they had it easier than their older siblings, that the rules were more relaxed for them, that they got away with more, and on the surface, this might even look true. But what people miss is why the rules were more relaxed. It's not because the parents loved the youngest more. It's because by the time the youngest came along, the parents were exhausted. They'd already fought all the battles with the older kids. They didn't have the energy left to enforce the same standards. So the youngest gets what looks like freedom but is actually neglect. They get less supervision, less structure, less attention to their actual development. And they interpret this as being loved, as being special, when really they're just being overlooked. Psychologically, this creates a deep confusion about their own worth. They're simultaneously told they're spoiled and treated as if their needs don't matter. They're called the favorite while being given the least individualized attention. The messages don't match the reality. From a birth order psychology standpoint, youngest children also inherit all the family's unresolved trauma. By the time they arrive, their parents have usually experienced disappointments, losses, conflicts that shape them. And those experiences color how they parent the youngest. Maybe the parent's marriage has deteriorated by the time the youngest is old enough to notice. Maybe financial stress has increased. Maybe an older sibling has struggled with something that's consumed the family's emotional resources. The youngest grows up in the shadow of all of this. Behaviorally, this shows up as youngest children becoming expert people pleasers. They learn to read what others want and become that. They adapt their personality to fit the situation. They lose track of who they actually are beneath all the adaptation. In relationships, this creates a pattern where they're always the one trying harder, always the one apologizing first, always the one sacrificing their needs to keep the peace, because that's what they learned relationships require. Here's another pattern. Youngest children often struggle with being taken seriously. Their family has assigned them the role of baby, of comic relief, of lightness. So when they try to be serious, to express genuine pain or need, they're dismissed. People laugh when they're trying to be sincere. People tell them they're being dramatic when they're actually hurt. People don't believe them when they say something is wrong because it doesn't fit the role the family needs them to play. Psychologically, this is invalidation. And chronic invalidation teaches you that your internal experience isn't real, isn't important, doesn't deserve attention. You learn to minimize your own feelings because everyone else does. From a family dynamics perspective, the youngest often becomes the scapegoat for family dysfunction. When things go wrong, they're the easy target. They're too sensitive. They're overreacting. They're causing problems. When really, they're just reflecting back the dysfunction that already exists. Let me tell you about a specific dynamic. In many families, the youngest child becomes the emotional spouse to one or both parents. The parent confides in them, relies on them for emotional support, treats them more like a partner than a child. This feels special to the youngest child. They feel chosen, trusted, important. But it's actually parentification. It's an inappropriate burden that robs them of their childhood. They're meeting their parents' emotional needs when the parent should be meeting theirs. This creates a lifelong pattern of taking care of others at their own expense, of feeling responsible for other people's happiness, of believing that their value comes from what they can provide, not from who they are. Neurologically, when a child is consistently put in the position of managing adult emotions, their brain develops differently. The parts responsible for self-regulation don't develop fully because they're always regulating others. The parts responsible for identifying their own needs get suppressed because attending to others' needs takes priority. From a trauma perspective, this is a form of emotional neglect. The child's emotional development is sacrificed for the family's emotional stability. And because it looks like love, because it comes with attention and affection, the child doesn't recognize it as harm. Here's what happens when that youngest child grows up. They find themselves in relationships where they're always the therapist, the fixer, the emotional support. And they're exhausted, but don't know why. Because this is all they've ever known. They attract people who need saving, people who are emotionally unstable, people who rely on them to regulate feelings they can't regulate themselves. And the youngest child feels needed, which they've learned to mistake for being loved. Psychologically, this is repetition compulsion. They're recreating the family dynamic in their adult relationships, not because they want to, but because it's familiar, because their nervous system knows how to function in that role. From a relationship psychology perspective, youngest children often struggle with receiving care. They're so conditioned to being the caretaker that when someone tries to take care of them, it feels wrong. uncomfortable, like they're failing at their job. They apologize for having needs. They minimize their problems. They insist they're fine when they're falling apart. Because asking for help feels like breaking the unspoken contract they made with their family. The contract that says their job is to give, not to receive. Here's another manifestation. Youngest children often have a hard time with anger. They learned early that their anger disrupts the family peace, that expressing frustration or resentment makes them the problem. So they suppress it. They become the agreeable one, the easygoing one, the one who never complains. And that unexpressed anger turns inward. It becomes anxiety, depression, self-criticism, because it has to go somewhere. Behaviorally, this shows up as perfectionism. If they can just be good enough, helpful enough, successful enough, then maybe they'll finally be seen for who they are instead of the role they play. But it never works, because the role is all the family knows how to see. From a nervous system perspective, youngest children often live in a state of chronic activation. They're always scanning for emotional danger, always ready to intervene, always prepared to shift the mood. Their system never fully relaxes because relaxation means they might miss something. This creates physical symptoms, chronic tension, digestive issues, sleep problems. Their body is holding the stress of constant emotional vigilance, and they don't even realize it because it's been their normal for so long. Let me tell you about the youngest child who leaves home. They often feel guilty, like they're abandoning the family. Like without them there to regulate everyone's emotions, the family will fall apart. And sometimes the family does struggle when they leave. Not because the youngest was actually holding everything together, but because they were the symptom bearer, the one who absorbed and discharged tension. Without them, the family has to face its own dysfunction directly. Psychologically, this creates a painful bind. The youngest wants independence but feels responsible for the family's stability. They want to build their own life, but feel like they're being selfish. They're trapped between their own needs and the role they've always played. From a differentiation standpoint, healthy families allow children to separate and individuate. But families that have relied on the youngest for emotional regulation resist this. They pull the youngest back. They create crises that require the youngest's attention. They make the youngest feel guilty for leaving. Here's what makes healing possible. Understanding that your role in the family wasn't natural or inevitable. It was assigned to you. And what was assigned can be refused. The first step is recognizing the pattern. Seeing how you've been conditioned to prioritize others' emotions over your own. Noticing how you automatically move to fix tension or lighten moods. Becoming aware of the invisible labor you've been performing your entire life. Psychologically, this awareness creates choice. Once you see the pattern, you can choose differently. You can let tension exist without rushing to resolve it. You can let others sit with their own discomfort instead of rescuing them from it. Behaviorally, this means practicing boundary setting. Saying no when you're asked to perform emotional labor. Allowing people to be upset with you without immediately trying to fix it. Prioritizing your own needs even when it disappoints others. This feels terrifying at first. Your nervous system is wired to believe that other people's emotional stability is your responsibility. So when you stop performing that role, it triggers intense anxiety. But that anxiety is just your nervous system recalibrating. From a therapeutic perspective, working with a therapist who understands family systems can be transformative. They can help you see the patterns you can't see from inside the system. They can validate the harm you experienced while helping you develop new ways of relating. Somatic practices also help. Learning to tune into your own body's signals instead of constantly scanning others. Practicing feeling your own feelings instead of absorbing everyone else's. Reconnecting with your own emotional truth. Here's what people who've healed from this pattern will tell you. The hardest part is letting go of the identity you built around being needed. When you stop being the family's emotional regulator, you have to figure out who you are without that role. You might discover you're actually not that agreeable. That you have opinions, preferences, boundaries, that you're allowed to be difficult, complex, human. This can feel like a loss of self, but it's actually the beginning of finding yourself. Psychologically, you'll also have to grieve. Grieve the childhood you didn't get to have. The one where your emotions mattered as much as everyone else's. The one where you were allowed to just be a kid instead of the family's emotional support system. From a relational standpoint, your relationships will change. Some people won't like the new boundaries. They'll miss the version of you that always put them first. They'll try to guilt you back into the old role. And you'll have to decide whether those relationships can evolve or need to end. But the relationships that survive this transformation become real. They're based on mutual care instead of one-sided caretaking, on genuine connection instead of role performance, on who you actually are instead of what you can provide. Here's what youngest children need to hear. You weren't spoiled. You were exploited. Your emotional labor was taken for granted. Your needs were overlooked. Your development was sacrificed for the family's stability. And none of that was your fault. You were a child doing what children do, adapting to survive, learning to be what your family needed you to be. You didn't choose this role. It was imposed on you. But as an adult, you have choices now. You can unlearn the patterns. You can reclaim your emotional energy. You can build relationships based on reciprocity instead of rescue. You can discover who you are when you're not performing for everyone else. Behaviorally, start small. Notice when you're about to jump in and fix someone's mood. Pause. Ask yourself, is this my responsibility? What happens if I don't intervene? Let yourself sit with the discomfort of not managing the situation. Practice expressing your actual feelings instead of the feelings you think others need you to have. Say, I'm frustrated, even if it makes things tense. Say, I need support, even if you're used to being the supporter. Your emotions deserve space too. From a nervous system perspective, your body needs to learn that it's safe to not be responsible for everyone, that you can relax without disaster striking, that other people can handle their own emotions without your intervention. This recalibration takes time. Your system has been in this pattern for years, maybe decades. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories. Notice when you choose yourself, even in tiny ways. Here's what makes this work worth doing. On the other side of the caretaker role is freedom. The freedom to be fully yourself, to have needs without guilt, to build relationships based on authenticity instead of performance. You get to discover what you actually like, what you actually want, who you actually are. Not the version that keeps everyone else happy, but the real you. And that person is worth knowing. If someone came to mind while watching this, a youngest child who's always been called spoiled but you can see now was actually carrying the family's emotional weight, share this with them. They might need to hear this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell because we explore family dynamics, psychology, and healing on this channel. Drop a comment and tell me, are you the youngest child? Do you recognize this pattern in your family? What role did you play? Your story matters and someone else might need to hear it.